Jenny had tears in her eyes when she finally heard her newborn daughter cry. The arrival of the baby into the world had drained her. Jenna was exhausted and still couldn't believe she was done with it all. The nurse placed the little girl on the chest of the young mother. Finally, she could take her little one in her arms. Jenna looked around the room. "Where's Jason?" she asked. It seemed that her husband was not there. But when she finally found him, his face was pale and Jenna immediately understood something was wrong. Jason walked up to her, took her hand, and said, "I'm sorry." "Jason, what do you mean? Why are you apologizing to me?" Jenna asked. But before she could figure out what was going on, Jason left her hand and ran out of the room, leaving Jenna and their newborn baby alone. Jenna burst into tears. What's going on? Why is he leaving me? Jenna was in a hospital room with her baby girl in her arms. Her husband had just left her, and she didn't know why. Her mind was unleashed by an excess of emotions. She was happy and terrified at the same time. She felt relieved about the birth, but at the same time, she didn't know what was going to happen next. But above all, she was distraught at the thought of being left alone. Jenny's mother entered the room. She had just arrived at the hospital to congratulate her daughter, but she saw Jason in the hallway. She had talked to him, and now she wanted to explain everything to Jenna. She took her hand and said, "Honey, there's something you need to know. If you knew Jason, you'd probably be able to relate to his odd behavior. We are going to give you some history that might explain what he did right after his daughter was born." Jason didn't have any siblings, although that wasn't always the case. When he was young, Jason grew up with his twin sister, Grace. They loved each other so much that they were inseparable. Jason and Grace enjoyed building tree houses and going to the beach with their parents. No matter where Jason went, Grace always accompanied him. Jason and Grace had big plans together. They thought if they were together, they could conquer the world. At 13, they vowed to visit at least 30 countries before they turned 30. When Jason and Grace were both 15, they were still full of energy. This was especially true for Jason. Grace, meanwhile, was complaining more and more of fatigue. Due to severe headaches, she often missed school. Their parents had no idea what was happening to their daughter, so they took her to the doctor. Grace explained to her doctor that she often has headaches and is very tired. The doctor first said that it could be because she's a young woman and her body is going through a lot of changes. However, Grace added that she started having memory problems. The doctor's attitude changed when he learned that such a young girl was starting to have memory problems. So he decided to do some tests. And before Grace was even fully aware of what was going on around her, she was given a head scan. Of course, all this time, Jason was by her side. Grace was very upset by it all. She had a bad feeling. Jason felt the same, like they both knew something was wrong. After an hour of waiting, the doctor finally came back to them with the results and said, "Please sit down." "Unfortunately, I have bad news." The doctor continued, "Grace, it looks like you have a big brain tumor. We're going to do some more tests to see what we can do to cure you, but I don't want to give you unnecessary hope. Unfortunately, this doesn't look good at the moment." Jason was heartbroken. After all, he could not live without his twin sister. Unfortunately, the doctor's suspicions turned out to be correct. It soon became apparent that Grace only had months to live. The siblings were devastated. The twins would soon be separated forever. One day when Grace and Jason went to their old treehouse, Jason made 2 promises to Grace. The first promise Jason made to Grace is that he will always try to visit 30 countries before he turns 30 like they had planned to do. Grace liked this idea. But when her brother made his second promise, Grace began to cry loudly. Jason took her hand and said, "Dear Grace, if I'm ever lucky enough to have a little girl, I'll name her after you." Tears welled up in Grace's eyes and she hugged Jason. It's worth remembering that they were both only 15 when they made those promises. A few months later, Grace passed away. Beautiful memories reminisced and everyone listened intently to Jason recounting the wonderful adventures he and Grace had had together. Sadly, Jason was left alone from then on and missed his beloved sister. However, he soon made a serious decision. Until now, Jason was convinced that he would start traveling when he was a little older, but he decided to spend the next Christmas in Canada, the first country on a list of 30 that he wanted to visit over the next 15 years. Jason had planned to stay at a bed and breakfast in a small town in Canada. It was going to be his first Christmas without his parents. He was very nervous, but he wanted to meet new people and see the world. However, he could not predict everything. On the third day of the trip, he went to the Christmas market in the city center. He was a little disappointed with the start of the trip because he hadn't seen anything interesting yet and hadn't met many new people. He suffered from loneliness and missed his parents. Jason was depressed by it all, but everything changed when he saw the person suddenly standing in front of him. Jason came face to face with an unknown girl. He was stunned by her beauty. She had lovely long, dark hair and eyes. The stranger approached him and said, "Hi, I'm Jenna. Nice to meet you."